farming, fishing, foraging. Townsfolk engage with multiple lines of production and commerce all across the Isles. The props and equipment dotted around their homes are carefully curated to complement that point. Per the Ghost of Tsushima artbook, their outfits are also embroidered with distinct patterns expressing something about the game's various regions. Floral and plant-based patterns mirror the farmlands of the starting region Izuhara. Embroideries of streams and fish represent the wetland marshes of Toyotama. And geometric shapes like snowflakes represent the snowy mountains of Kamiagata. The art team at developer Sucker Punch Productions also paid a lot of close attention to designing the different NPCs' swords, with more major characters having Tsuba, or handguards, with distinct iconography emblematic of their histories, personalities, and story arcs. As we take a closer look at all this, we'll also examine the works of film director Akira Kurosawa, and consider where the game scores its stated goals of imitating the feel of his films, and where it's off target. How did Kurosawa shoot his ancillary characters? How does Ghost of Tsushima? Dialogue, design, animation, and annotation. NPCs fill the worlds of our favorite video games in a variety of ways. I happen to like people watching in games, and I also like virtual photography, or the use of in-game photo modes and cameras to snap interesting shots. So at the intersection of those two things, I've been photographing NPCs as my subjects of interest for some time now. I talk to them when I can, follow them around, and pay extra attention to their clothing, character design, narrative motifs, and behavior patterns that might go unnoticed by the average player. And here's what I learned. Set across the backdrop of the 1274 Mongol invasion of Japan, Ghost of Tsushima suits you in the armor of samurai Jin Sakai. Jin is on a quest to liberate Tsushima Island, and his adventures take him across several settlements at threat of invasion. I've covered the game before in my debut NPC compilation video, but I'm expanding it into its own standalone episode now with the added benefit of having the director's cut and DLC under my belt. See, Ghost of Tsushima holds a special place among my digital albums. If Spider-Man was the game that got me into virtual photography, this was the one that got me into photographing NPCs, specifically, and it was thanks to a happy accident. I happened to open photo mode while walking around Kechi Fishing Village. At the same moment, this fisherman turned to look at me. It's dumb, but it felt like a fourth wall break. A moment of recognition that inspired me to take a closer look at him, and her, and slowly several others around Tsushima's world. I followed them around, listened to their stories, and bowed my greetings and goodbyes when finished.
Protect Tsushima, my lord.
Sheathed by my waist, ready to draw at a moment's notice, was the generational best photo mode of 2020. Developer Sucker Punch Productions clearly innovated a lot with it to give their players freedom to take different kinds of photos, with sliders to manipulate weather, time of day, and even the movements of the game's particle effects. It made the island and its people that much more worth seeing. The standard preamble for any analysis of this game is that Ghost of Tsushima is only passingly interested in historical accuracy. The samurai armor seen in it is deliberately not from the Kamakura era it's set in, but instead based on, quoting studio founder Chris Zimmerman, most people's idea of samurai, which is really more of a 16th, 17th, 18th century idea of samurai. End quote. To be more specific, the game is more interested in filmic representations of Japan, namely the samurai films of director Akira Kurosawa. A lot of the world and character design resembles what you might have seen in those movies. Kurosawa famously used weather and environment as a way to complement and contrast, let's just say, complicate character interiority. Take his film Rashomon. Heavy rain pours over the Rashomon gate where the narrators sit sharing their stories, all torn over what they've seen. It only clears at the end of the film, when they've resolved a lot of their core conflicts, and the monk has started to rediscover his faith in humanity. This kind of environmental mood setting and symbolism was by no means unique to Kurosawa, and in fact became a staple of the genre well beyond him, but he was one of the most consistent and influential practitioners of it. Ghost of Tsushima smartly adapts that sensibility into the interactive space. There's a lot of emphasis on wind, weather, and landscape as storytelling tools. In large part, this is effective, from subtle details like your combat choices impacting the weather, to the more obvious guiding wind mechanic. In combat, fighting honorably and face-to-face means clarity, blue skies, honeygold sunsets, and cherry blossoms sifting through the air, while fighting dirty and sneaking up on foes means a darkening sky, ominous storm clouds and rain. In exploration, guiding wind replaces typical open-world HUD markers with natural environmental waypointing that's situated in the world. The wind blows where you need to go. It's as simple as that. Sometimes you follow animals to little secrets around the island. On top of this, the photo mode's inclusion of wind, weather, and particle effect settings go hand in hand with the Kurosawa influence too, letting us compose similarly multi-layered shots of the game's world. Thanks to some additional touches, these configurable settings still manage to feel real and unmanufactured. The animated environment toggle lets us shoot with the weather in motion, even with this being a traditional photo mode that's otherwise paused the action. Wind, leaves, rivers, fabric, these things still rustle and gush. Capturing a lightning bolt in a shot still takes a quick trigger finger and sense of timing. You might have a lot of control at your fingertips, but there's still a challenge to getting your photos right. Hey, that's me! Changing the weather to stormy summons the bolt, followed by a pause, then the roar of thunder after. A neat touch. Meanwhile, during regular gameplay, Jin is typically framed with the rule of thirds in mind. Ghost of Tsushima cares about having a cohesive photo mode because it is a game that cares deeply about composition, and it cares about composition because it cares deeply about film. However, there are also aspects of Kurosawa's work the game doesn't capture, particularly when it comes to NPC interactions. I want to talk about that because Kurosawa did a lot of interesting things with his side characters that Ghost of Tsushima simply doesn't. Strangely, most NPC interactions in it are shot from a distance. A typical side quest begins and ends with wide shots of Jin and whatever quest giver he's talking to just standing in the environment, trading lines from afar. It's a stark contrast to the shot-reverse-shot NPC dialogue seen in other games of its ilk. It's certainly an interesting choice that stays budget-friendly on lip sync and animations, while still carving out a distinct aesthetic for the game, one where nature can be the focus and the people just live in it. But a byproduct of this is that individual NPCs can feel depersonalized. By extension, their quests can too. The game's official art book clarifies that this choice was indeed inspired by classic samurai films, and the use of spatial contrast in the genre as the team, quote, tried to showcase the environment as much as possible. They strove to create symmetry and were not afraid of using natural framing like doorways, end quote. But what the game forgets here is that Kurosawa also deeply cared about people, including his ancillary characters. If you look at some comparable shots in his movies, you'll notice his characters don't just stand around in the landscape. They move and actively interact with it, racing through the water, scrambling up sandy cliffs, kicking up dust. The camera is not a passive observer and is invested in following even the most cursory of characters. Note this early scene from Throne of Blood that welcomes us with a wide shot of average civilians hard at work in the fields, all seen from afar. But upon cutting to the town proper, the camera picks people to follow. and checks us in on their day-to-day. Or take his use of nature as interstitials, shots of a moving sky to mark the passage of time in Ran, or pouring rain to punctuate the action and refresh us between acts in Yojimbo. But when that refresher ends, we pan back to a person, watching the rain from close to the camera. The sequel Sanjuro has something like this too. We see footsteps cross over a babbling brook on the way into a compound. Shortly after, we come back, as they go the other way out the compound. We linger on the surrounding scenery for a few beats, then seamlessly cut to movement into a human perspective. Here in Ghost of Tsushima, however, everyone stands and moves the same. The camera treats them largely the same. These wide shots capture one element of Kurosawa's work above all else, at the expense of all else: his use of weather and environment. But it doesn't capture interiority, or conflict, or human feeling in quite the same way. For those things, the game invests into its main cinematics and gameplay instead. We'll switch gears to talking about those in a bit. I do have a little more to add about the NPC conversations though. Naturally, it is difficult to imitate too much of this in a video game where you're tethered to one character the whole time, but I don't think it would have been impossible if these scenes had been a bit more willing to play with framing. Let's take some examples where main characters share scenes with side characters. Here's a moment from Ran, where our main character, played by Tatsuya Nakadai, sits surrounded by followers. We have the gorgeous wides, of course, but notice the shot variations too. Each cut is deliberate and evokes a distinct feeling. Time passing, a character's mental state, suspense. If they show us different angles on the same thing, it's to intentionally evoke monotony. To Ghost of Tsushima's credit, it does use shot variation when these conversations with NPCs are happening, but always focused on the same thing, and I don't think with the intention of evoking monotony. The cuts don't communicate very many distinct ideas. Alternatively, Yojimbo, again, featured this fun shot of Toshiro Mifune's character playing two rival gangs against each other. It's framed so that he's sitting high up in the center, watching the two gangs edge in and out of two sides of the screen. The main character is present, the landscape is prominently featured, and we still get a lot of personality out of the side characters just from the framing. Back in Tsushima, when enemies come to fight, they kind of just run in. When two factions confront each other, they just talk, then draw their weapons. Just to reiterate, my main gripe here is with these NPC conversations. In more critical story scenes, where the game flexes its full budget, the people are generally a lot more animated and interesting. The big battle set pieces are beautifully directed and feel straight out of blockbuster film, evoking a genuine sense of scale and of loss. It's just, these scenes are typically reserved for Jin, his friends, and the main plot, and less for the average people. I bring up these points because the relationship between the samurai class and the common people was a critical theme and point of interrogation in most samurai films. But with Ghost of Tsushima being focused on a foreign invasion, it isn't as thoroughly explored a theme here. Farmers, peasants, and laborers take a backseat, and primarily act as set dressing or people to be rescued, and the way our conversations with them play out feels like a byproduct of that. All in all, there is a sense of stoicism in the camera whenever Jin is interacting with a minor character that misses how lively, expressive, and theatrical the average people in samurai cinema could be. Here, the question becomes, does the game make up for that in other ways? So, can we better understand the ordinary people of Tsushima by taking a closer look? Are there other aspects the team successfully translates from the films they were inspired by? How did I find so much to love about Ghost of Tsushima's NPCs anyway? Whatever my issues with the game's cutscenes, I do think it recaptures much of Kurosawa's sensibilities with its gameplay. If you liked how he used time of day to telegraph jumps in time, you'll notice similar feelings of transitional storytelling just walking through the world. There are a few joys like roaming some relatively empty streets at night, and then watching a village wake at dawn. The people emerging from their homes, one by one, ready for a hard day's work. The combat system and photo mode are tailored with unique cinematic flourishes to express those vibes too, as we saw earlier. When you liberate a settlement from enemy forces, you get some nice wides of the NPCs slowly starting to rebuild, and in gameplay afterwards, you might find them cheering if the victory's still fresh. Walking around, you can also find them rebuilding and fortifying. As well as punishing enemy prisoners. Outside of its filmic influences, the game employs some really smart, distinct theming to almost every village in it. Every settlement has a story. Thankfully, the game's photo mode lets us get a closer look at the people and what those stories might be. We'll also listen in on the ambient dialogue and consider if it does anything particularly interesting. Finally, we'll also look at the Iki Island expansion, which actually addresses a lot of the gaps here and refocuses the narrative on that vital conceit of the genre, lingering tensions between the samurai and the average people of Iki. Tsushima's islands are dotted with countless towns and settlements, and by extension, industries. Hot spring resorts with air bathed in steam, farmlands and open fields green with crops, smithing forges that chug smoke skyward where the banners are singed and the air becomes a blanket of grey, shaded pirate hideouts of scum and villainy, where the woodwork looks shoddily put together. Sucker Punch worked hard to ensure every one of these settlements had its own theme, and they show this not just through NPCs and environment, but also lighting and contrast. Akashima Village, for example, is a mysterious medicine town with an angelic, sun-bleached look. NPCs can be seen trying to take care of one another and healing through different means, passed down across generations. We can find them cooking, collecting herbs and making herbal remedies, washing out old fabrics, and lighting incense. Umugi Cove is a den of pirates and thieves, so it's typically shrouded in fog. Bandits and ronin wear large straw hats that cover their faces, and sit around sharing drinks. The game's costume designs are a particular standout, as outfits come in a huge range of patterns and colors. Many of these were realized by artists at external partner Little Red Zombies, across both the base game and DLC. And LRZ did a lot of the hairstyling too. Let's take a closer look in-game, shall we? Civilians can be seen wearing kimonos and hakama and rope sandals, the standard footwear of the time. The fabric patterns are purposeful too. According to the game's art book, they represent the different environments NPCs inhabit in the game. Embroideries of flowing rivers and streams represent the wetlands of Toyotama. While geometric snowflake or snowstorm patterns represent the colder regions of Kamiagata. Now, while this is stated in the book, the different patterns do pop up in different regions in practice, and aren't exclusive to where they apparently originate from. It's just interesting to know the original thinking behind them. We also see some fun designs of flowers, trees, and maize fields. and dragonflies and moths. And, of course, classic stripes and rings too. Many of these patterns were conceptualized by lead concept artist John Powell, who reports on his ArtStation that, quote, "The NPC characters had a limit to how complex they could be, so all of them share roughly the same base, which then gets buried under add-ons and then covered with patterns to hopefully maximize variety." End quote. And the variety truly does shine. Many of these accoutrements also gently rock in the wind. Depending on their professions, NPCs also carry woven baskets on their backs, holding harvested crops, or lumber, or fish, which also sway in the wind. On a PlayStation blog article by fellow lead concept artist Ian Junwei Chu, we learn, quote, "Since the wind plays a big part in our game, we made sure to always have parts of the outfit that reacted to the wind, such as capes and tassels. This helps make the characters feel more connected to the world." End quote. He states they put a lot of thought about this into both main characters and NPCs, and makes particular mention of the character Yuriko, who wears a scarf with light, cloudy patterns, symbolizing her slowly fading memory. The various vendors are designed to stand out and look distinct. The tailors sit surrounded by armors, and wear far more fabrics on them than average, backing multicolored spools by their sides. Merchants lug giant stashes of goods on their backs, and have to support themselves with a stick to stand. Bowyers wear these triangular arrow patterns on their vests, which feels appropriate. There's variation within the professions too, as, quote, "The white garb of the swordsmith represents a master rather than an apprentice. You'll only really be trading with the master, but it helps that we can recognize his apprentices at work." One thing I particularly appreciated here is that we see a lot of older NPCs in the game. We get a wide age range represented with nice facial details like wrinkles, graying hairs, and scars. Small details, like facial hair, also become clearer as our cameras get closer to the NPCs. Naturally, NPCs also dress for the climate typical of their homes. Those living in the cold are more likely to wear furs and heavy coats. Both neck scarves and headscarves, and fur-lined boots. This is also true of the enemy pool. The Mongol soldiers start out in relatively light armor in Izuhara, but they get bulkier suits lined with fur as we progress into later acts up north. The PS blog article states, "The Mongolian army consists of 5 tribes, and we had to differentiate them across the island in acts. The more powerful the tribe, the more armored and fur-laden they are." End quote. Here, have a look. One of my favorite aspects of the game is that every quest begins with a little title card over some kind of relevant thematic imagery. Moving from these interstitials and back into gameplay always feels really good and grounding. It calls to mind Kurosawa's Kagemusha, where the title shot transitions into these sleeping soldiers, all laying perfectly still and establishing a sense of space, until a messenger darts through, waking both the soldiers one by one, and activating the film's action through character. And all in all, these title cards are one of those areas where Ghost of Tsushima nails its cinematic aspirations. But I also want to point out that this is a video game, and moments like this are made possible by how much thematically interesting imagery populated its world to begin with. The artists gave themselves a lot to work with, and are taking full, clever advantage of it here. Many of the game's props were also based on field research that the dev team conducted in Tsushima and at various museums. I also love how much mileage it gets out of these props because in many cases, they speak for character, showing signs of lives lived, routines observed, places of habit set up, even in parts of the map that are otherwise empty. Note this little fishing dock in the woods, with its basket of fishhooks, and the clothesline set up just nearby. As for more visible routines, woodcutters chop wood, and chit-chat about things like, say, famous Japanese folktales.
Why wouldn't I? The bell was a gift from the monks of Mount Hiei, centuries before even Benkei himself.
I like my story better.
Farmers plant and picket their crops at daybreak. They also shake these rice winnowing baskets around to separate grain from chaff, a process that, in real life, works best when it's windy out. Tsushima plays host to several farmsteads, but what's cool is that they also have different specializations. Take Aoi Village, for example, where the residents can be seen farming seaweed. There are multiple fishing villages, and we can see NPCs fishing both by the sea and in small lakes around their homes. Some fishermen use traditional rods. While others sit watching over fishing traps. Once the catch is brought in, someone empties the fishing baskets and sorts through it. Heads up for a brief content warning, there are some scenes of animal death coming up, so feel free to skip to this timestamp if you'd rather not see that segment. These fishing villages also have distinct theming. In Kechi Village, for example, the NPCs are strongly implied to be cormorant fishing. This was the practice of using trained cormorants to gobble up fish that they then could not swallow, as they would have snares tied around their necks to prevent it. The fish would be temporarily stored in the bird's gullet. Later, the fishermen would have them regurgitate the fish to collect it for themselves. While the devs didn't animate this whole deal, it is very much clear from the cormorant cages the townsfolk keep stored in their shed. And the bodies of the old birds that lie in the water. There are other cages dotted around the town too. If you have a sharp eye, you can catch some low-polygon live cormorants hanging around town. Have a look. Unfortunately, they fly away if Jin gets too close. Up north, there's also a unique whaling village, where the NPCs sail out to hunt whales, and harvest whale meat and blubber. It's a pretty striking and somber sight all around. Workers at the silk factory sit hunched over silkworms and silk cocoons. There are breweries too, and I highly recommend Brian Ashcraft's article on the game's depiction of brewing sake for a more in-depth look at them. In a nutshell, the equipment shown here is accurate, but ahistorical. Centuries ahead, in fact. We can see NPCs here crouched over wooden dakidaru, or canisters used to regulate temperature while brewing. While they look good and help make the NPCs look busy, these canisters would not come into use until centuries later. Pictured here is a photo by Ashcraft himself. He goes on to point out several other fascinating historical inaccuracies in the game, and makes the point that, quote, Ghost of Tsushima does give the feeling that the developers, working closely with Sony Japan, have done their research. Even if the historical and cultural elements feel compressed, streamlined, and sometimes inaccurate. A lot of what the developers appear to be drawing upon, as evidenced by the game's Kurosawa mode, is Japanese cinema and not Japanese history, end quote. And as he makes clear, that's by design. Studio founder and programmer Chris Zimmerman admitted as much too in his interview with GameSpot. They deviated from history in a lot of places, but wanted to make sure those deviations were always targeted and intentional, in service of the game's pillars. The haiku sections in the game, for example, are period inaccurate and don't make a lot of sense, but they give us chances to sit down and just be with the environment, while still maintaining a human lens. To paraphrase art director and creative director Jason Connell, it was not about getting all of the details right, but just enough to buy belief. So, do we believe? Because that's the running question, right? Whether it's costuming or animations or general behaviors, whether it's historical accuracy or cinematic purpose, the NPCs need to feel convincing within at least the parameters Sucker Punch intentionally set up. And for me to believe in these characters, technical constraints around them being equal, I need to get the sense that they have beliefs of their own, that they experience sensations on their own. I see this in little details like how drunken sailors kind of gag and wobble, but if you stick around long enough, very long mind you, they'll eventually puke. I won't show that here because it's not really fun to watch. Let's move on. I see this in how workers dip their feet on hotter surfaces. And jump back if it burns. Once acclimated, they also shovel charcoal from those areas. It's good they're practicing fire safety, unlike this guy I found who's on his way to roast himself some food. I don't think it cooks faster if you do that. The NPCs in Ghost of Tsushima aren't particularly realistic, reactive, or dynamic, but there is a tangible sense to what they're doing that feels mostly believable. They have values, they have a belief system, and I see this in how they memorialize. With the onset of the invasion, an omnipresent shadow of death has descended over the people, so we glimpse bodies being covered, graves being dug. And funeral pyres for grievers to congregate around. NPCs engage in both Shinto and Buddhist practices, as is typical in Japan, and in this time of crisis, they seek comfort in their faith. The world design is in no small part influenced by that. The weather is really its own character in Ghost of Tsushima, as we've seen over and over, and that feels very connected to the spirituality its people believe in and call on. While the environment may feel deliberately dramatic and exaggerated a lot of the time, the people in it, and their relationship with it, generally feel believable. So that's faith. What about the game's beliefs with regards to work and life? All across the aisles, I noticed a recurring emphasis on work and manual labor. This might have seemed unnoteworthy by itself, but what these repeated images also revealed for me was a distinct lack of opportunities for fun.
I heard they treat some prisoners fine if they have a skill to offer.
Which you don't.
Why do you think I'm so happy to be free?
With some exceptions like eating, drinking, and most notably playing music, the NPCs of Tsushima don't find many ways to enjoy leisure. They rarely paint, or dance, or play board games or anything. The message here is clear. This is a bad time for them, and so they are only able to find time for their most basic needs. I don't think it had to be this way though. Some of the most moving interactions I've seen in games have been NPCs finding ways to enjoy life, in spite of the circumstances around them. This is something I wish Ghost of Tsushima could have found some more time for. For me, at least, it was a gap that undercut how real the people felt. Returning to Kurosawa, his films often reserved pauses in the action for characters to sit back and enjoy themselves. Partake in performances and rituals that showed how light can still filter in times of darkness. Both The Hidden Fortress and Seven Samurai featured extended scenes of civilians just singing together, or celebrating their victories in synchrony as they worked. Of the samurai finding some time to play with the children and make them laugh. What little joy is there in the game is nice, if in short supply. NPCs can be seen cradling babies, and you can hear little cries when standing nearby. Primarily, they socialize over food and drink, and if they've had one drink too many, will even start to act aloof and inebriated. Here, watch. We can see NPCs chewing on skewers,
Tsushima already.
He's a smuggler. Why do you think? Money.
or sipping cups of tea, or trimming their fingernails with knives to pass the time.
The ghost killed the god. He really is invincible.
On Iki Island, two civilians can be seen playing a game of Go. And while Jin can't partake, you can place a bet on who'll win and collect a small reward for it later. I've also run into secret couples having secret little dates in the wild, far away from the prying eyes of other neighbors and villagers. They do not like it when you find them, though.
Leave us alone.
Musicians perform on the roads, playing the biwa, or the flute for passing villagers. Music plays a fairly big role in the game's story and especially the DLC, so these scenes were much welcome sun rays amidst the clouds. Notably, you can also play certain tunes on Jin's own flute to change the weather. NPCs also enjoy art in the form of poetry and oral tradition. Often you'll find them sitting around campfires, listening to the local storytellers. Pages of calligraphy and ink painting lay scattered by the feet of one particular storyteller, sometimes depicting demons and other mythic figures. Gyozen is not just your average NPC, but also the narrator for the multiplayer mode, Legends, where players go on missions with a more mythic, supernatural bent together. So the drawings make sense. On Iki, we can also find a woman who's a fan of Gyozen's work, surrounded by the same pages. She's very interested in old legends as a fun tie-in to the multiplayer mode. I believe this makes her the only quest giver who asks you to go talk to Gyozen, aka to play the dang multiplayer? It's a little silly. But between the two of them, I do love that we have this in-game framing device for the multiplayer that lets us directly access it from Jin's campaign. While I'm not really a Legends player, it felt cool to have this mode situated in the main story as this thing a storyteller is proselytizing about. Again, it helps Tsushima's various modes feel that much more cohesive, and acts as a cool nod to the more supernatural elements of samurai films besides. And speaking of stories, I have to talk about Ghost of Tsushima's ambient dialogue. Starved of much activity to decompress with, NPCs gossip on street corners about a multitude of things. Seven Samurai also had lots of scenes of the farmers the samurai are protecting just working, with these rhythmic, repetitive motions as they gossiped. Tsushima has some lovely animation loops of NPCs just working too, and it's really nice that they will at least talk to one another when they work.
Of course. Why wouldn't I?
Unfortunately, these exchanges aren't subtitled, so you really have to listen in. Here, have a listen. I've cranked the volume up.
Then you can teach me.
I am not skilled enough to teach anyone. I can craft a blade on my own.
And I can't sharpen a stick into a point.
Maybe I can try.
Great. We should get started right away, Sensei.
Don't call me that.
If we study the patterns, there are a couple of lessons we can take away from them. 1. Ambient dialogue can help hint at a larger world beyond your game map. People actually chat about what's going on outside of Tsushima and even Japan, with mentions of the invasion having reached Korea.
I'll get off Tsushima, you'll see.
Where will you go? The Mongols rule China and Koryo. They've taken everything.
The mainland.
2. Most games already do this, but NPC dialogue can also hint at things to do within the map. Since Tsushima's mechanics are so diegetically situated within its world, like how Jin finds points of discovery by following animals, or how Legends mode is accessed through talking to Gyozen, these lines work even better, as it's very natural for NPCs to describe similar adventures about being led to treasure by songbirds.
One day, just pick a bird you see and follow it as far as you can.
What of the Mongols?
Be careful of them, of course. There was a beautiful yellow one I followed once. It was as if we were traveling together.
Or about struggling with the archery challenges dotted around the islands.
Best defense is to not get anywhere near bastards.
This is exactly why we have archery challenges around Iki. To train fools like you to shoot fast and run.
Or about Gyozen being a weird dude.
You listen to any stories from Gyozen?
That blind storyteller?
He always has a new story to tell.
Listen to him, and you'll begin seeing Oni in the forest too. Gyozen is no normal storyteller.
3. To round it out, NPCs can also comment on world events and shakeups as you progress throughout the story, giving players a greater sense of agency and change. This was maybe the most fun thing to track through Tsushima. Its people always seem to have something to say about your most recent quests. Some even claim they were there to witness you. From this point on, please note that the remainder of the video will feature spoilers, as we'll start getting more into the story of both the base game and the Iki Island DLC.
There I was, holding the ghost armor while he faced Lord Shimura in a duel to the death.
I was so amused overhearing a fisherman gossip about how he looked after the ghost's equipment during his last duel.
You were there?
The ghost trusted me to guard his equipment. I couldn't say no. If you saw everything, all the rumors true. The ghost struck down the samurai, placed a red leaf in Lord Shimura's palm, and granted the Jito mercy.
A true hero.
I told him so myself as I returned his gear.
He's embellishing, of course. None of that actually happened, but I like that he mentions a red leaf, since the site of the duel was full of them. Really fun detail.
The ghost thanked me for my loyalty.
A story to tell your grandchildren.
They might also have opinions on what you choose to do in the ending.
Lord Shimura, you saw him?
Clear as day. The Jito rode up to his castle gates, gravely wounded, face pale. I saw him collapse. Then the samurai carried him inside.
How long until he recovers?
Could be months. If I see the damned Mongol that did this to him...
Wasn't a Mongol. The way I heard it, Lord Shimura was defeated by the ghost, struck down in a duel, then left alive.
That ghost is a traitor, just like the Shogun says.
He saved my father. Whatever happened, there must have been a good reason for it.
Don't be so sure.
These exchanges felt closer to Kurosawa's works, I think, which often spent time on common townsfolk just chatting. Very often, these scenes of street-side gossip and rumor-mongering would also act as little check-ins on what the average populace thought of our main characters. It transplants remarkably well into a video game space. If Tsushima is missing some of that thematic concern the movies that inspired it had around the relationships between commoners and samurai, this is one way in which it captures some of that juice and blends it into the soundscape.
So he snuck in here that night, got away, and then came back to free the rest of us later? That's impossible.
You can see why people call him the Ghost Samurai.
Based on its contemporaries, I do think the game would have included fun ambient dialogue, regardless of whether it was a staple of Kurosawa's films. But I do think the cadence and playfulness of the dialogue, at least, is inspired by them. Did you hear this person can do this? I heard he can actually do that. You drink too much, etc.
I'm telling you, the Mongol's emperor's throne sits on the tallest mountain at the center of the earth.
Listening to Enshin again, huh? The only thing he knows for sure is where his jar of sake sits.
But he can read.
There's a really funny bit in one of the DLC side quests, where Jin is trying to gather information and offers to help two women with their basket weaving so he can eavesdrop on them.
May I be of service?
Please.
They welcome the help, of course. But after you're done and have moved on, if you happen to circle back to them, you can hear...
He wasn't very good at that, was he?
The comely ones never are.
Quest NPCs can also be checked in on after their respective missions.
Lord Sakai, after you cleared the bridge, we headed straight here. How's the boy? Better, my lord. The hot springs are helping him forget.
With many of them having little updates or words of thanks for Jin, the most interesting example of this involves a side quest on Iki Island, so I'll revisit this point there. Here in the base game, the best places to seek out those updates are in the game's various temples, as they form little sanctuaries for people to escape to. We can see refugees lining up for meals, or for audiences with the monks.
I wonder where we'd go if the temple wasn't here.
Or seeking community with one another there. Here are some scenes around the areas. It's worth noting at this juncture that most major NPCs, like Yuna or Genji, don't really roam the open world outside of their associated quests. Insofar as I can tell, the one exception is the warrior monk Norio, who can always be found wandering around Cedar Temple. So that's nice. Jin will always have at least one buddy to go on his morning strolls with. Meanwhile, samurai wear armor ranging from light with minimal padding to medium with cuirasses and pauldrons, to heavy with kote, aka armored sleeves, and suniate, aka shin guards. The bulkiest suits are often rounded out by full, intricately designed helmets. Reddit user MulberryField30 has done some stellar documentation of all of the samurai outfit variants, so I definitely recommend their post, linked in the description, for a more comprehensive breakdown. Each warrior also wears the colors and sigil of whichever clan they're from, with unique flourishes in the armor designs to match. I'm referencing yet another Reddit post by user Fire Cyclone, who's interpreted all of the Mon, or clan family emblems, really nicely. Members of Jin's clan, Clan Sakai, dress in black and gold. Their Mon is two mountain peaks that reach upward. This symbolizes the Sakai family standing tall, imposing and unshakable, and the imagery also goes hand in hand with their connection to storms. In addition, the family has a close allyship with Clan Shimura, who are led by Jin's uncle and dress in black and red. Their Mon is a sunrise over a field, representing their history as a small, humble family that gained power, honor, and respect over time. Currently, they're Tsushima's most influential clan. In an ironic twist of fate, their emblem is also used as the trophy icon for beating the game, so it gets a double meaning, representing Jin's own transformation and rebirth. Clan Adachi dresses in more cool-toned colors like blue and turquoise, and their Mon is made up of ginkgo leaves, alluding to their history in the ginkgo forests of Ariake Prefecture. They helped build the Great Golden Temple, which you spend a lot of time around in the early hours of the game. We can also see the emblem on their leader, Lord Adachi's helmet. Clan Nagao's Mon shows two crossed arrows, since their warriors are known for their archery skills. Two of Jin's closest allies, Sensei Ishikawa and Lady Masako, are from Clan Nagao and Adachi respectively. These distinct color-coded banners and insignia for the samurai clans seem to have been inspired by Ran, which featured similar demarcations for its armies. Speaking with Games Radar, art director Jason Connell says, quote, "When I think of samurai banners, I always think of Ran," end quote. While we're on the theme of Kurosawa influences again, it does feel a bit silly in this light that they named their black and white filter with the Japanese dub Kurosawa mode, when Akira Kurosawa's influence is clearly on the whole game, its use of color included. He directed quite a few samurai films in color and used that as an important storytelling tool when he could. There are some striking scenes in Ran and Kagemusha of various armies stirring in sync, the colors on their armor slowly, mechanically, deliberately blotting through the frames like paint, or armies steadily filling the screens with their signature colors and banners as their forces build momentum. And you can see the threads from that art direction in these samurai NPC designs. In the vibrant hues of Tsushima's big battle scenes. In the way they move, the way they practice discipline. While these are all heavily fictionalized families and characters, the team at Sucker Punch did travel to real-life Tsushima to collect reference images and conduct extensive research on their setting. Jason Connell, again, covers this journey in a 2021 GDC talk.
You learn a lot about how a sword is created, and this right here is called a suba. And suba is just this handguard. It's not just a handguard, it is a handguard. It's a lot more than that.
One of the details they really honed in on was the suba, or the handguards on swords.
It is icons of just artistry and mastery, just beautiful pieces of Japanese artwork that I just kind of thought was a cool looking handguard. And you realize that sometimes it's connected to family, sometimes it's connected to stories.
So for key characters, the artists really personalized their suba to reflect their individual characters and journeys, with hero characters having special, more ornately designed handguards than the average NPC. The Straw Hat Ronin Ryuzo, who has very tenuous, splintered alliances, has these tree splinters on his hilt, as well as a handguard resembling an asymmetrically cut bark of wood. Senior concept artist Naomi Baker calls his sword the Splinter of Goshinboku, or Splinter of God Tree. There's a story about a kami in the shape of a fox inhabiting such a tree, so they placed an engraved silver fox on the sword's kit here as well. Masako is hunting the people who destroyed her family, so her sword is called the Silent Hunter, and her suba depicts a deadly mantis, poised to strike.
She's a hunter. And so going after, when we have to create this piece of artwork, it's not just a generic piece of cool art, it's connected to who she is as a character in an artfully poetic way, deepening her story.
Jin's father has lightning bolts emblazoned on his, to go with his family's association with storms. Later, Jin himself will inherit this blade. The storm motif associated with their family is also an allusion to the fact that many of the invading Mongol fleets were destroyed by a sudden storm in real life. Remember way earlier I talked about the weather adapting to your combat choices? This illusion is a massive part of that. Storm clouds become more and more common as you progress throughout the game, and as Jin sustains his ghost meter.
We've had typhoons, earthquakes, flooding. Now another invasion.
We were born under unlucky stars, I guess.
Understandably, casual NPCs don't have the same level of detail put into their handguards, but they do still look finely made and distinct. If you watch them sharpening their blades with whetstones, you'll notice there are slightly varied animations, sound effects, and rhythms for shorter tanto knives, versus longer swords like katanas or scabbards.
Started eyeing the Mongol watchers.
Just when I thought his crew couldn't slide much farther.
Maybe if we find a boat, if the weather's calm.
This detailing all makes sense, because swords are obviously a huge part of the game. Swordplay is one of the primary ways you engage with its world. However, as noted by historians, samurai of the time didn't really use swords all that much, and typically favored archery, more like Clan Nagao. However much research the team put into design choices like the Suba or into cultural accuracy, we can see again here they took deliberate, sweeping creative liberties with regards to historical accuracy. The studio's goal was to create a fantasy version of Japan, inspired by an amalgamation of samurai films for players to lose themselves in. We've hit this point a few times, and it isn't just in the finer details, but also the broader premise and gameplay loop. Chris Zimmerman states, "The armor that you see, it's not 13th century armor. It's more Warring States period armor. Because, honestly, the 13th century armor is pretty jarring looking. It's not what you'd expect. It's really boxy. It doesn't look aspirational. And we want to make sure that what we give you is your fantasy of what being a wandering samurai is." End quote. The nice thing is, we can find samurai training both with swords and with bows. They'll keep at it from afar, but if Jin happens to get in the way, they'll pause for a bit. Very polite. Some arrows hit their marks dead on. Others are bent and withered from time. Enemy designs are quite impressive too, spanning the Mongol soldiers we looked at earlier, hostile Straw Hat Ronin, and bandits. Often these warriors also have little battle scars across their faces or cheeks, which is a cool touch. Different factions also have little narrative quirks that manifest through gameplay. My favorite example, in the case of the Mongols, if you kill an eagle bearer without killing their eagle, the bird will actually circle and fly back to their body to mourn. It'll stay there for a while before taking off. Rest of the army be damned. With the benefit of hindsight, the prominence of Mongol eagles here also feels like a harbinger of things to come. In 2021, Ghost of Tsushima's lone major expansion, Iki Island, introduced a powerful new Mongol adversary called the Eagle. In addition to Tsushima, the nearby Iki Island was also invaded by the Mongol Empire in November of 1274. Fittingly, Ghost of Tsushima's Iki Island DLC sees Jin traveling to the eponymous isles to investigate a mysterious poison that drives its victims mad. It's a beautiful expansion overall that teems with life, and is simultaneously haunted by death to a greater degree than even the base game. On his quest, Jin learns that the Eagle and her army are the ones administering the poison, and we can see NPCs driven mad by delirium in most settlements. Have a look. There's one vignette I really liked here. A musician soothes a poison victim by playing a gentle tune on his flute. There's actually an interesting payoff to this. Later, at the end of a side quest, Jin does the same for another victim, a monk under great duress. It felt like a nice full circle moment for me, having witnessed a similar scene earlier. Early on in the campaign, Jin is captured and poisoned himself. It's the DLC's most radical change, and one that goes as far as to poison the main menu screen. In-game, the poison introduces a new mechanic that can throw Jin into random bouts of flashbacks and hallucinations as you play. The Sakai family has a fairly tragic history with Iki Island, so this mechanic works well. Some quests transport you back to when Jin first came here with his father's army as a teen, and we can see horrific vignettes of how their forces treated the locals here.
Father, what happened today?
These villagers were helping hide the raiders.
We butchered them. All the men in the village.
The samurai ran hot, yes. But these fools attacked us.
Given these scenes, it is understandable that the NPCs of Iki have much less grace for samurai than those of Tsushima did. We see this in gameplay too. If you bow, most people here won't return the gesture. The game holds off on resolving this all the way up to near the end of the DLC. Only once you've liberated Iki from the eagle with your new ally, the pirate and raider Tenzo, will Tenzo finally bow to you. He even has unique dialogue if you bow back.
A samurai bowing to a raider. Now I've seen everything.
It felt really special because no one else on the island was doing it yet, across about 8 to 10 hours of gameplay, and that nicely amplified the sentiment of the moment. While most civilian models carry over from the base game, the raiders, pirates essentially, are new designs exclusive to Iki, and they look great. They've got their own maritime-themed banner and sigil, for starters. They're a ruggedly handsome bunch with roguish hairstyles, and all kinds of dotted tattoo markings on their faces. These likely allude to how criminals would be branded with tattoos during the Edo period. Have a look. Most are dressed in blue, and their costumes include nautical-inspired flourishes like seashell necklaces, and signs of shipboard life like lots of rope work. They're always on the move, and might even carry double-gourd drinking flasks close to their chests. I noticed at least one character, a storyteller who once sailed with a legendary pirate, has this beautiful fish art embroidered on his clothes. More heavily armored warriors might also wear chains and metallic bracers. Pauldrons, buckles, etc. We can find them training with cutlasses and scabbards, or bows and arrows, and long pole arms near the water. There's a bookend tournament at the Raiders' hideout where you can watch the contestants go at it with wooden swords. Choose to partake yourself, and you'll spar with an eccentric cast of rivals, including an oil merchant whose hands and face are visibly a bit oily from her work. That's just a really nice detail there. Emerge victorious against all the fighters, and, as always, word will disperse across the island.
Still can't believe Bokto won.
A Ronin against a monk, a launderer, a lamp oil merchant, and some windbag? And you surprised? How much do you lose, anyway?
Hey, all of it. I bet everything on Sao. Red's my lucky color.
Maybe not anymore.
In addition to talking about Jin, they can also talk about characters like Fune or Sugi, seeding in little tidbits about their backstories even before you meet them.
You think Fune would have taken your son for what he did?
It's her law. Applies to everyone. Well, everyone but her.
What do you mean?
When her daughter made a mess, Fune cleaned it up. But if it was one of us, she'd have taken our heads.
There is a side mission called The Impact of Loss, and it's arguably the most dynamic in the whole game. Here's the setup. You find a small camp suffering from a food and medicine shortage. People are hungry, people are sick, and the monk and healer who looks after them has gone missing. So you enlist the help of one of their own, a young woman named Hotoke, to go look for them. Hotoke's husband has also disappeared. On your travels, Hotoke tells you about how she lost her arm during the samurai campaigns here years ago, how the monk helped her through her recovery, how she found a new life with her husband at their camp.
I found a wounded samurai in our stable. Gave him food and water. My father caught me. Cut off my arm. The hand that fed the enemy, he said.
That's cruel. He was wrong.
No, he was right. The next night, the samurai came to our village and slaughtered everyone. It was Thoshin who took me in, tended my wound, I survived because of him. I owe him my life.
Finally, you arrive at a beach to find that the Mongols have captured both the monk and the husband, and are holding them hostage. You can only save one. The way this is framed, the monk to your left, the husband to your right, with Hotoke standing here dead center, elicits an interesting feeling. She has her right arm still. Her husband lies that way, and saving him means letting her hold on to the only thing she has left, means a chance for her to continue her future with him. Her left arm was amputated, and the monk lies that way. Saving him means maximizing the camp's chances, at great cost to her. It means sacrificing something she'll feel the loss of forever. It also means honoring the past, as he was the one who helped her work through her injury way back when. Naturally, there are two endings to the quest itself. If you save the husband, Hotoke will thank you, reveal she was pregnant, and grieve the monk with her husband in mournful acceptance.
Our family is grateful to you, but I fear for those back at camp. Thoshin made sure we were fed, had medicine.
Save the monk, and she will curse you out, tell you she's with child, and storm off to grieve alone.
Hotoke!
You've robbed my child of a father!
If I had known.
Our lives have no value to you. That was true 15 years ago, and you proved the same today.
Either way, the quest resolves. There are no happy endings. There is no right choice. Jin's part, though, is done. But if you happen to check on the camp out of your own curiosity, you might see your choice has massive repercussions for its people, as saving the husband means they'll continue to starve and fall sick. There's no dialogue, but we can see even Hotoke has contracted some kind of illness. Visit again after a while, and she'll be dead, as will everyone else. Only the husband you saved remains, crouched over her grave.
What happened here?
Without Noshun, people left. But those of us who stayed, we've no food or medicine.
Where's your wife?
Meanwhile, if you save the monk and decide to follow up, the camp will actually be in stronger spirits. People seem to be well fed and recovering. Though Hotoke herself is conspicuously missing.
Your camp looks well.
The Mongols drive more to us every day, and I'm grateful to be here to help them. Have you seen Hotoke? She hasn't had her child yet.
If she had told me she was pregnant before...
You would have chosen differently. Perhaps that's why she remained silent. Hotoke gave you the choice she couldn't make. Easier to hate you than to hate herself.
And man, does she hate you. She can also randomly ambush you with a band of hired pirates while you're free roaming. Relishing the chance to curse you again.
Hotoke, what are you doing here?
Sending you to hell.
It was one of the few side quests that felt truly potent and personal to me, and a big part of that is that it was willing to try things both in the realm of cinematic design with blocking and framing, and game design with branching paths and emergent play. And aside from some awkward execution, I felt it worked. The true, quote, impact of loss becomes clearer the farther you get from the quest. I'm yet to play the sequel Ghost of Tsushima, but I look forward to seeing if Sucker Punch tried more things like this side quest with it. What I do know is that it features a flashback mechanic for the new protagonist Atsu, where she can recall memories in certain parts of the map and during certain missions. I can't help but notice the groundwork they laid for this in Iki Island, with Jin's poison causing some interesting memories and hallucinations based on sensory triggers in the open world. Talk to an NPC cradling a baby, and he'll be reminded of a father he saved from danger near the start of the game. Come across some raiders who have been tied up by the Mongols, and he'll remember when his father's army once tied up innocent villagers. These moments do a really good job of fleshing out Jin's interiority through gameplay and clever NPC interactions, while also calling back to earlier points in the game and personalizing them a bit more. I critiqued the side quest setups for feeling distant and passive, but these hallucinations very much have the opposite effect, and I adored them. On the enemy side, the Eagle tribe introduces some new Mongol designs to the mix too, including some pseudo-mysticism elements it's best not to think too hard about. These include chanting shamans who buff their allies and send them into a berserker state. Here, have a look. Their sabers also have this ornate draconic design emblazoned on the blades. And the Eagle's generals also wear a clearly avian-inspired battle helmet. As for the Eagle herself, she looks almost demonic in battle, especially when Jin is afflicted by the poison. There's a great moment in the final boss fight with her, where literal eagles will zoom past overhead as particle effects. In keeping with its Shinto influences and aesthetics, Ghost of Tsushima has a tendency to use birds, and animals more broadly, as messengers, spirit guides, and symbolic representations for key characters. Jin's father Kazumasa is often represented by a proud stag, for instance, and if you return to the site of his death, you'll find a family of deer grazing by the tree. Interestingly enough, Jin's interactions with animals are shot from closer up than those with our human NPCs. They were already a nice presence in the base game, often guiding you to unmarked treasures if you followed them, but here we have even more kinds to pet and befriend than before. There are nice, fun vignettes for them too, like how the monkeys can be spotted scratching each other's backs. They stop if you get too close though. We can also see humans brushing their horses. Or sitting next to their pets. Programmatically, the game has some interesting taxonomies in place. While most large animals and mammals roam the wilds like actual NPCs, Tsushima is also populated by smaller critters like crabs, frogs, cranes, and cormorants, who are classified by the game as particle effects instead. Notice what happens when I turn the environment back on. All in all, Ghost of Tsushima boasts a lot of fun, well-designed NPCs to spend time with, both among humans and in the wild. I remain mixed on their side quests, but nonetheless found myself charmed by how they move through the world. The game uses its ambient dialogue nicely and clearly in service of its stated goals. To feel like a real place that's always changing, to nudge its players to keep exploring, and to flesh out the world in feeling like a classic samurai film. That is, after all, the prerogative. Sucker Punch picked and chose from different eras of Japanese history, despite their game being set in the Kamakura period, because they wanted to portray an idyllic fantasy version of Tsushima, where it's all seasons at all times, where every vista inspires Jin to write haiku, where the world is always beautiful as it is temperamental, and the people are just subject to its whims. Still, they get by. For me, at least, what's impressive is how much joy there is to be found in the photo mode, which embodies the same filmic philosophies as the game itself. An emphasis on composing movement, on letting you capture human and nature side by side, and on the poetry, anachronistic haiku and all, of that adjacency. Heads bow in moonlight. Friends for a moment passed by. Strangers become ghosts. Hey, thanks for watching. This video is part of a series in which I look at NPCs in even more games that pique my interest. I also make video essays about games, movies, and all that good stuff. So if you like my work, consider subscribing. This video is made possible by your support here and on the crowdfunding website Patreon. If you'd like to see more of this kind of work in the world, or your name in the credits of future NPC videos, consider checking out my page there. Solid patrons and above get early access to individual chapters of videos as I work through them. It's a nice way for me to share from my longer projects that necessarily take more time and research to develop. I am also posting my virtual photos there. Those are totally free for all followers for your viewing pleasure. So enjoy! Finally, alternative. There's also a Ko-Fi link as a one-time tip jar, equally as appreciated. Thank you as always for sticking around, and until next time, remember that every stranger on the streets got a story, and every story can only get stranger.